So I cannot tell everyone how grateful I am that Eugene Richards decided to do this with us. I'm absolutely thrilled, and I cannot thank Sam enough for helping this facilitate all the technical end on their side. So I'd like to thank Photo Shelter, Epson, Pro Photo Daily, and American Photography for always being there with us. Um, and with that, I give you Mr. Eugene Richards. It's all yours. Share your screen, and off we go.
All right, you're all set.
Okay. Um,
Thanks, Sam.
Man, well, it's nice to be here and kind of a shock that I accepted Frank's invitation because I'm a kind of shy speaker. I've done a few this year, and part of the problem I think is, I mean, some of you will let the elections sort of slip into your conversations. It's for all of us. This has been a remarkably tense time, but then there's been a lot of tense times in American history. Um,
Eugene, your screen is all black.
yes, it is.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, so it should be. All right, great.
Yep.
Okay.
Um, I'll put a picture up there for you. Oops. Right there would.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
Great.
this is what we're going to be talking about today. Is the book we published last year. When I say we, are a little publishing house, which is my wife Sam, um, my wife Janine, Sam, who does a lot of technical work, and myself. Um, I probably kind of messed up my talk a little bit by reading the papers today um, and thinking about the election. Uh, and the issue that keeps coming up, and the reason I'm bringing this up is most of my work is about intimate studies of one person at a time, and yet right now the world is uh, fumigating with major problems. When I read the paper today, and I listened to everybody last night, it was always astounding to me that both Trump and Harris both applauded two things. Uh, they both applauded the lethality of our weapons in this country, which is a very strange thing to be applauding, which is as if people don't know what lethality means. It means carnage, it means people burning, people being bombed, etc., in mass. It's a very strange applause sign that's green, and the divisions, plus the divisions that we keep talking about in this country, are getting larger. It seems people are getting more afraid of each other, and I mention this because now to go back and go through this book uh, for you,
That one.
that one. Um, this particular book was a result of began uh, not the idea, but it was actually a book done quite quickly. But a few years ago, I had one of those early cases of COVID, and it made me, like all of us, consider your life. I went out and did a couple of projects, and then at a certain point, I realized that at the age that I am, I'm 80 years old. Uh, Work's not going to come to me. Things are different. Attitudes are very different about photography. Political correctness is getting more severe. Those who have allowed us to do certain kinds of stories are getting more and more limited. It's actually Sam who suggested that why don't I just kind of shut up and stop worrying and go back to my files in the past. This is what we have that we missed. So these are photographs from the beginning of my career that were left out of books, left out of museum shows. The first one I think I show you is, and I'll explain them a little bit as we go by, is kind of important because people say, why do you take photographs? And this is a preacher down in Arkansas back in 1970. It was among the first photographs I ever took in terms of with a small camera. And he asked me to take this picture because he wanted to hang it in his church. He wanted a picture, and the reason he wanted it in the church is, he says, because he recognized that he was in the society he was living in, he was quite useless. He was a sharecropper, a very poor man with a very poor family. And as he said, that this picture would make him immortal in a certain way, at least for a period of time. And that's what he wanted done with the photographs. Looking back on it is kind of moving because that's a good reason why a lot of people let me into their lives, is um, they want to be significant in somebody's eyes, I think. Um,
And Eugene, how do you nurture that relationship that you're the one to take that intimate photograph for somebody of somebody?
we just had an airplane fly over. I'm sorry, Frank. What did you say?
Said, how do you get yourself ingratiated with these folks that you can take these intimate photographs that they allow you in?
Well, the very in the beginning, I'm sorry, you didn't give background. I was a kind of a draft resistor kind of guy with a lot of questions about my being a draft resistor, a lot of guilt from it, etc. Wanted to do something involving the country, joined Vista, and became a social worker for about a year, and then was actually asked to left Vista political activity. Uh, a group of us got together and started a small newspaper in the East in Arkansas, in West Memphis, Arkansas. But as a result, I was a kid from inner city, not probably not much different in your life, Frank. Grew up in, uh, except that Italians in my neighborhood were it was Irish, and Italians to me were great oddities, partially because it was a training ground. Your life was a training ground. I could go from my kind of you know, formal upbringing next door to the Italian families who would feed me, hug me, all that kind of shit. All the cliches were true. Um,
Yeah.
so I learned right away that people are different for different reasons. Um, when I got down south, how did I approach it? Uh, I don't think there's any lessons. I don't think there's any way to learn. I think you're either very curious or you're
Mhm.
not. I think you're able to listen to people or you're not. And listening to me, when I tell people, especially if I have students, is listening is everything. I think there's a lot of photographers, we probably know that you say, how you doing? And they give you their resume. I said, I don't care about your resume. How you doing? How's your family? How's your life? I don't want your resume. And when you go into somebody's home, the first step, of course, is listening and recognizing that everybody is different. Everybody has different sensitivities, and you can look at people, and you can, with training, or at least Stephen Randall, you can you can get the sense when you welcome. You just take your time, and you have to allow people, actually, to bring you in. When I go to somebody's house, even today, I tell them about myself, and then I try to stand away as much as possible. But I can show you a little more as we go. So, Sam, we just 2 minutes.
Click, yeah.
So these are people that I met. More and more, I recognize that even though today, that's one of the issues today, is a lot of photography. It's not good or bad. It's a different kind of photography. Is when you do portraiture, you arrange it. The collaborative portrait is very important to a lot of people today. In other words, you share the meaning of a picture. I always felt more comfortable standing back and letting things happen. That became the picture. So it became a methodology. Um, I was in the South for 4 years. Uh, Came back. Our newspaper was kind of put out of business in a sense. We couldn't raise the money, and the Klan was very active, and people were afraid of being hurt. And everybody was very tired. And we got a sense also that there was a great movement going on in Arkansas. It was a political movement, and we had done our job as bringing in information as newspaper people, but our job, as far as we could go, was over. So I went back to my town of Dorchester, Massachusetts, and there I linked up with the woman who would be my first wife, Dorothea, and we moved into a neighborhood. We both came from Dorchester. We were raised up. My mom was, my father was a shipyard worker earlier. My mom worked to clean houses, and we were, I guess you call it blue collar family. And this is a blue collar neighborhood with all kinds of people in it. That's the thing I loved about it. There was every nationality in the neighborhood. Some getting along peacefully, some of us not. Um, this is talk about Puerto Ricans. We got the great thing about Puerto Ricans going on. Well, this is a Puerto Rican family. Um, Bringing me up there. Okay, thank you. Sam has got my hand here to make me stop. But for example, going to a Puerto Rican home, it got to the point where it was like going home. I mean, it is upsetting to hear some of this stuff because, uh, you know, these are people who were initially, and you're walking around, you're a little bald white guy, even back then, and they wonder what the hell you're doing. You meet the kids, meet mostly the women in every family I go into, who are the ones who are judging you more than even the men are, because they're taking care of the kids. And you meet people, you hang out with people, you go back a couple of other days. And that was a time when, not today, I don't think as much, but people weren't worried about their kids. The kids could take care of themselves, so you could photograph uh, uh, the children. And this is just in a bedroom with a bunch of kids. And the little girl with the rooster is very beautiful. And I didn't cut her head off on this frame. The original frame I made doesn't have this. Of course, her brother is bored to death, and the little girl was shocked by the rooster. And it's just life going, the way it happens.
Yeah, and Eugene, when you put this book together and you went through your archive to find these images, were you surprised that you missed this one or that one? How, this one stands the test. So many of them, of course, stand the test of time. But what was that experience like for you to go back?
It's like aging, isn't it? Everything about getting older is you see things differently. You see things not wrongly, but you miss a lot of nuances. When I was beginning photography, I wanted to make statements about people who are struggling in poverty, and later on, I realized that that's a little bit too pushy in a sense, and it's better to talk about the value of people's lives, so the diversity of people, which is something that we're losing today, is the incredible diversity of the human experience, and so it's not judgmental. Yeah.
And did you keep terrific notes to remember,
No,
when?
it's none of your business, Frank. I don't keep any notes. I'd kill myself for that. I don't.
Okay. All right.
No,
So
no. I
it's just
realized
memory.
No, I was recovering, and I realized at the time I had a lot of injuries in the south to my head, and a lot of it, my experiences were
Speaking of Alex,
visceral street experiences, and I didn't have the sense to keep great notes. And later on, I became more so uh, and I also came much more to value the interview
with him
and things that I should have known better, you know. But these are street photographs, needless to say. It's strange, though. It's an interesting question, because now when I look at the photographs, if I'm trying to write about them, if I spend the time, even with my memory problems, I can reconstruct very accurately, but it takes time. It's digging in the ground. You can come back with the memories, the feelings, etc. It's one of the wonders about photography for me, is that it does bring you very concretely back.
And it's great to see that Mustang there, right? That's a Mustang?
Yeah, I guess so. The little girl with her shocked look is this little girl. I mean, you ask yourself, how do pictures happen? I'm out on the back porch with a bunch of kids. Uh, Little girl's in the pool. She gets very emotional. I didn't know at the time what was wrong with her. She was actually uh, seizure condition, which I understood because I had them when I was years earlier, and she was exhausted from this and sort of fading away into a dream state. So when I saw that, that's the way you think, is you think, well, she's in a dream state, and there is a dreamy quality of the cows and the plane. So the picture is made in that respect. This is a circus clown, actually a little person. I don't know what the proper term anymore. You've got to be very careful with what you call people today. Um, then it was a little person that's what they liked, who was quite abused, but he still went out and visited people, kids in the hospitals and so forth after retirement. This is a tough picture for people to look at. This is Dorothea. About this in 1980, I began, at her insistence, a project about women's breast cancer. Um, she was suffering from breast cancer, but didn't wanted to do a book as a journalist, but didn't want it to be on herself. The hospitals all said no in Boston. They said, even though the women in the hospital all said yes, the hospital said no, rights to privacy. So she said, photograph me, which I found very, very difficult to do. but we ultimately did do a book called Exploding into Life, but it came out after I lost her by that time with the breast cancer. So a lot of these stories came out of assignments. None of them were published. They all seemed to go by the wayside. I have a talent for doing things people don't want. This is an assignment out to a hospital for the criminally insane in Ohio, where they had pet animal projects and a deer brought over from the zoo, ironically, because the kids threw rocks at the deer. So they brought it in here to join with the crazy people. And it was a remarkable place to be with some dangerous people. I hung out there. I actually slept over. They forgot I was there. I slept over and met folks there. They were all ages, various degrees of criminality, some from petty, terrible alcohol problems to people who committed murders. About this time, I was just joining Magnum, the Magnum agency. And the day I joined, I got a call from Life magazine asking for people to go to Beirut. I'd never been out of the country, but I was kind of showing off. And I said, shit, why not? I'm a new member of Magnum. And put my hand up. I never thought I was going to go. Honest to God, I thought everybody else was going to go. I'm not kidding. Suddenly I was going. I had never been in a situation like this. And I did what I could. It was a great, it would require a book for the learning lesson that this was for me of how to survive on the streets, how to, and I also learned about the nature of my fellow photographers, who some of them are very wonderful, some would kill you for a photograph. But I met people like Christine Perkins, who I still remember as a photographer, who was so generous, helping me find my way. So if I get dramatic, what happened is I couldn't get rides. So I ended up walking in Beirut, which is something you shouldn't do in a war zone. But you met people like militiamen, and I ended up, this story very well now from the terrible things that are happening in Gaza. This hospital had been hit by actually Israeli gunfire, and the patients had no idea what was going on. And these are the kids who were down in the basement. That really nobody cared about. And so you take these pictures, you hope people see them, you hope they use them. But we have a tendency as human beings to forget very quickly. I think without being preachy, I think most young people have no idea what the Iraq War is. But this is what you see, and this is what you'd probably see if you went to some of these places today.
Yeah. So Eugene, you're like 35, 30 years old when this is sort of happening. Is there a moment where you said, this is my calling, this is what I want to do, document the human condition? Like what was, and photographing your wife with her illness? I mean, how did that all play in for you, that period of your time, of your life?
It's a good question, because in fact, I think when I was younger, I took some classes with Minor White in Boston, and then I decided I kind of wanted to be a photographer, but I had no idea. And then beyond that, I went into the work in the South, and I never felt that way. I never made a pronouncement that I wanted to be this. I wanted to be a photographer, but the work became naturally. I never thought of myself. Even as a photojournalist, I grapple with it today because it has such ramifications, separating you from other photographers, separating you certain ways. But no, I never did. And to this day, for that matter, it became, people say, why do you do this? And I say, well, that's what you do. It sounds sort of simple-minded, but that's what you do. And I think a lot of us happen into our lives that way. I know people who, Janine, my wife, does myriad things. But, being a mom to her is what you do. It almost wasn't a choice. And you meet people all in every line of work, and this is what we do. And so I don't know if that's answering your question.
No.
Janine and I worked on a project together. This is in 1985. We decided that we needed to do a project at the time on poverty in America more formally. And we went on the road for 6 months meeting families. This is in Chicago. This This young woman is 12 years old. She's pregnant with a baby. We met all kinds of people who were very open to wanting people to understand the situations they're in, not necessarily to approve of them or to applaud them, but to understand them. And I think that's the goal. If I have any goal at all, is simply to provide enough material so people can question and get their own answers. We went to Tennessee where I had a great time up in the mountains of Tennessee. When I say a great time, I won't go into anecdote. This is one of the hardest places I've ever been to get into. This is in Back Mountain, Tennessee, where they don't welcome strangers. And took me 3 days, 4 days of hanging out before they talked to me. It spoke to me about the power of photography. When I first went to their house, it was way up a mountain road. I had talked to them on the phone. A woman there said, "Come, you can do a picture of us." And she meant one poverty picture. You know, the poverty picture that the FSA did, people looking grim and that kind of a thing. They posed on the porch for me for a poverty picture and then said, "Well, you got to go now." And you got what you wanted. I kept coming back every day. And on the fourth day, they let me in. And right after that, it was like being family. It was very hard to leave there. They lived a tough way, but they were very generous, as most people are once you get to know. This is the house they live in. Letta Casey, this is her name now. I didn't know that she had cervical cancer until later in her time there.
And Gene, can you talk about, like the moment where they let you in? Like, was it just through, you're there every day and they trusted you? Or was there some type of significant time and period where you said something, you did something where like he's for real? Because
Yes, actually, it's a good question because there was, but it's vague. I was out on the porch on the third day, the second day, and a kid brought a glass of water out there because they realized it was so hot they didn't want me to die on them. I think that's really, honest to God, it was hot. The third day, a kid named Henry came out, this lanky, bony kid. He came and sat beside me, and we talked. And I don't think Henry had ever sat down with a man and talked about his life. He was talking about what it was like for him as an outsider in his family. I mean, he was very frail, and it was a very macho culture. You hit the punching out fights, and he was a different kind of kid. I think that Letta Casey, the mom, saw me talking to the kid, and it was okay. And if I had this relationship with Henry, then she trusted me too. That's what I think. Henry went back in, and the next morning, Junior, what happened is I went in there and Junior rolled a joint and gave me a joint to smoke. And I think it was a test to see if I was a cop because they all had a weed patch in the back.
Right.
But that door was open, and I realized that. I mean, he put his ramifications down. If you ever go near Letter and I, when we're in our private space, I will murder you, stuff like that. But otherwise, it was like, this is it. I came and go. No doors were locked. I came and go like I was into your house, perhaps after we knew each other for a while.
Wow. I mean, that is really an incredible moment. I mean, because I think the way you just described it, we all were sitting on that porch as well. You talking to that little boy. That's a great story.
It happens all the time. Sometimes, like pictures are sometimes seconds. This is a second. I saw these kids playing basketball. I shot up shooting basketball, and suddenly this kid comes over, grabs the gun out of the pocket of the boy on the edge there, and shows it to me. I don't know why he showed it to me, and I don't know if it's a live gun or a model. I wouldn't touch it. He says, "Here," and I said, "I'm not touching this gun," because I didn't know, and I never found out whether it's a real or a model. People keep guessing one way or the other, but it was a matter of seconds, and then it was a very difficult, tough neighborhood. This is in Philadelphia, North Philadelphia. And at this time, I was working on with a writer named Ed Barnes, who's since passed away, on stories about the hardcore drug addiction in America in 3 neighborhoods, one of them being East New York, and trying to find the toughest neighborhoods and its impact on family. on what it did to family and kids, the drug addiction. So these are later pictures that I never published before. This little girl, and it sounds so, I don't mean that to be in uh, any kind of pejorative sense. They were little girls. They were, you know, 15, 16, 17, addicted, making their money sometimes on the street. The young woman in the background, her nickname was Crack Annie. And they were the nicest kids when they weren't using, in terms of there were places you could go. You asking a question. There were places you could go, even in the housing project that we were in, where people would kind of, it was okay to come by and hang here. They kept you away from the gangs and so forth. So people could be very generous to you. Donna, I wrote about Donna because you need to know about Donna. I mean, this picture shows, you know, a crazed crack addict. You wouldn't know she was 24, had a child, had been very abused, was addicted to drugs. I met her on the street when she was selling herself. Every day she wrote a letter to God saying, God, help me get out of my addiction so I won't live this way. And she didn't live much longer. No one knows who murdered her, but she died not long after this picture was taken. She came into my car to hide from the police who were patrolling in the area. This is a young boy, 15. Again, you could see this picture. He's being harassed. This is the drugs that he was having. He was stoned to the bone. I don't know if it matters to people or not to know that he was so stoned because his brother had been murdered the day before, trying to sell bad drugs to somebody, and someone shot him. And that's the nature of the complex nature of addiction, that you know, you can hint at it with pictures, but you can't show the depths of it. A guy who came in there to buy drugs, he wasn't a dealer or anything else, and because he gets thrown out and slammed down, we know the images. The cops weren't bad cops; they were rough cops. So it's a catch-22. He's terrified. The cops are rough, and that's the story that you have.
And in the time of doing this type of work, were were there ever times where you felt frightened for your own, yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard. Sure, I mean, more so because at the time I had a new child, and so did the writer, and so we would, we actually left all this at the very end of this project, which was a couple of months' work. We decided we were too well known and getting to be too easy to set up, meaning, one night we found out that a couple of different gangs, we were going to meet with each one of them, were getting together, and we were going to meet them all together. And we said, we're going to go home. But no, there were quite a few bad moments. I think they're hard to describe it. It's nothing like I don't, see these people like the Tyler Hicks and these people who are working in
Yeah.
Ukraine. I mean, they're every day of risking life. We were risking life, but it wasn't. It was you most of the time, and not like these men and women, even in Gaza or Ukraine. The deaths they're going to have, what happens to most of them are deaths of, as you know, these journalists die without any control. They die from a stray bullet. They die from a bomb being dropped on them. They die, here we could, in most situations, we could try to find and avoid it or talk our way out of it.
And the psychological piece of this, of seeing this helplessness and, poverty, how did that affect you, again, as a young man and a young dad?
Maybe it was from coming early. You asked if I felt any purpose. Yes, and I do in a way. I think there's so much media, so much attention, so many movies, so much, etc. There's a lot that speaks of our lives that's fabulous. The idea that you can on demand buying. We live comfortably in this country. We really do. We're very fortunate in that way. But I always felt strange. Maybe it's reading too much history, but you always know that, on top of that layer of the good life we have is a lot of history, some of it's negative. And I think that in some ways, there has to be a number of us that, you know, that sort of sneak underneath the cover and make it realize that these things exist. So this is happening now. I'm sitting in my comfortable house talking to you guys. This is happening now. I think if there's any, you know, there's some of us can do this work, and and I think we should. I think the mistake some people make when they criticize it is nowhere am I saying this is life. This is part of life, very definitely part of life, not all of life. If it was all life, I probably would throw the noose over the, you know, like everybody else. But I enjoy life like everybody else. I enjoy my family. I enjoy nature. But I know that this is something that I can do. I can get somewhat inside of situations and show the other part of life. Yeah. And there is beauty. So in this book, here's Janine, pre-Sam. Now Sam's 100 and 220 pounds. It's hard to imagine. But I took this picture and people say, why did they put it in? Actually, I had a woman asked me before about, and I said, well, you know, because people are beautiful to you, and Janine is beautiful, and that's enough of a reason for me to put a book of my own life in there. And I said, you have to see these things that are beautiful to you. Sorry.
Mm.
Part of the beauty of the work, in a sense, is you sometimes get a chance to expand your horizons, going to Africa. Everybody has said, what do they say soon, that half the population of the earth is going to be in Africa, I think in 2050. But going to Africa, you learn so much, and you learn about our beginnings as human beings. You learn about generosity. People, it was staggering traveling through Africa, that people everywhere will give you the food they had. They would try to, if you got hurt, there was no medicine, they would try to heal you. It's getting melodramatic. On the other hand, terrible poverty and hunger. We were there during the time of AIDS at one time and saw villages being taken out. You also learn about the role of women in other cultures. Women do all the work. I mean, it's not a surprise to anybody, but they do. Yeah. Came back, did a series of stories that turned out to be more controversial than almost anything we did. It was basically on family life in America. This is a kid in a church in South Carolina, curious about me like I'm curious about her.
Mm.
But I did a series for Life magazine. The first one they wanted was on a pregnancy, which was very hard to get permission and all around, and people don't want you there. And Janine actually made contact with this family. We didn't know what they looked like. They were gorgeous. I mean, how do you say that? Beautiful man and woman. She was Italian, came new to the country. Culturally, you know, you'd probably understand her. She was still a girl. She considered herself still a girl, and now she was about to have a baby. She liked me being there. We became friends, and she wanted somebody to try to understand that transition and how difficult it is to go from living a certain life to living another life. She thought that her husband wouldn't love her anymore because her body was changing, on and on and on. So I was there the whole week, and I was there for the birth of the baby. I actually drove them to the hospital. I stayed over that night. She went into labor. I was a kid that I put her into labor, and drove her to the hospital. And here's the baby.
It's amazing how you can garnish this intimacy with your subjects. It's really it's a gift. My God, beautiful.
It's more of a gift now. I'm afraid that, I mean, I don't mean melodramatic. That it used to be, and maybe I grew with the wrong people. Maybe I hung around with too many Italians. You know.
Hey.
No, I'm saying that because physicality is very
Yeah.
important. Physicality is very important. Today, you know, my son says, teasing me a little like I don't sniff hair like Joe Biden does, but you know, I have a tendency, as he does, my son does, and I does, is you hug people, you meet people, you shake hands with people, you say good morning to people. These are all good morning. You say good morning to someone in my neighborhood now, and they're terrified. They go, oh my God, you say good morning. So, meet her. No, I would never, you just, if someone needs a hand to hold on to, you give them a hand, and it changes things, you know.
Mm.
This is a street gang. I won't go into the story here, but she's you know, uh, no one, and this girl wouldn't be a street leader if she didn't grow up in such a rough place. She's now was Last time I saw her, she was working fast food, but this time she was in a very rough street gang in Kansas City. So I did a story on the relationships in the street gang in Kansas City. And we became kind of friends, I think simply because, again, you're straight up with each other.
So, Gene, when these assignments were being given out by the various magazines at the time, internally they must be saying Eugene can get this. He'll get this. Richards can go into that space and come out with things. I mean, that's a pretty impressive, comment on your resume, right? That's a job for Gene.
Yeah, except that I remember in a negative sense when we were working for Life magazine with Ed Barnes that I mentioned, one person actually said to Ed, what sewer are you going to get into today?
Oh, yeah.
Not understanding that we'll probably, I mean, I'm not being melodramatic. Sam knows that. My son's any different. We'd probably rather be in the company of people we met on the road than in the company of that we meet here in New York and in a more formal environment, or even an artistic environment, because people there take me for what I am. They examine me, they distrust me, they trust me. They don't care here, what are you? What do you earn? Um, you know, it's a different world. I'm out in the street and you earn your trust. You don't earn it by the kind of car you drive or the house you live in. It's a Sammy. He was a shy, contemplative child. He still loves baths, the same way that he did then. They calm him down. Back to Africa. Terrifying moment, awful, awful. I made some pictures of her, did not realizing initially that this baby had AIDS, which meant this young woman, 15, has AIDS. So there's moments that take you down a dark path. No way to help anybody, no resources, no medicines, just a story.
Mm.
Um, Sometimes there's a bright element that happens. I ended up doing volunteer work, first on a newspaper assignment, and then volunteer work for Mental Disability Rights International, which is an organization that deals with uh, psychiatric hospitals and the terrible conditions in them. We went down to Paraguay into a hospital, and it was rumors that no one believed. And how you get in these hospitals is you walk in. There's a great debate on people's right to privacy, which we believe in. The question is, if you ask permission, you don't get in. There's no idea what's in there. So it's a big question. But they said there was a boy who'd spent 4 or 5 years of his life behind bars. He was just a boy. We didn't believe that this was happening. And I walked in, found this guy right away. He was 17, got his food through the bars, was naked, and this is where he spent his life. He grabbed me, so you'll know it isn't easy. He grabbed me, and I thought he was going to hurt me. He grabbed me by the throat, and all he wanted, no one touches him. I didn't touch him. The bright side is this story, the investigation was published. He was released out of it. Now by this time he couldn't speak. He was very severely autistic, they said. Um, but he's living a life with families now, and he's doing quite well as far as I know.
Yeah. How do you manage to stay in contact, on the margins with these folks?
Well, you don't. I mean, that's no, and I would like to say you do. And the cases that later on, the people that I'll show you later on, yes, I'm still in touch with people from the last few years. One of the painful things about being a journalist, a photojournalist, or whatever it is that you meet people and then you go, and there's no way to get back. There's no way to go back to Paraguay. There's no way to get back to Sefo, Niger. I won't see them again. So that exacts a cost, yes.
Yeah, I would imagine for someone like yourself, that's got to be really hard to deal with.
Yeah, it's like, but it's like everything. I think that's no matter what we do, it comes as a price, and there's certain prices, and they're not terrible ones at times, but they're but you know it's going to happen, and you steel yourself it's going to happen, and you tell people it's going to happen. Uh, you like the human side, but I was in Arkansas many years ago, and the woman I photographed there didn't trust me at all because she had a couple of grandkids running around, and the grandkids naturally gravitate to the stranger. This is a former sharecropper family; they grab all over you, and she didn't trust me because I was a youngish guy, and they were little girls, and they were climbing all over me, and so she didn't speak to me for a long time. And I photographed her, and I thought she was remarkable the way she took care of her grandkids. And I thought she hated my, I don't want to use the term, um, until the last day. And I said, until the day I said I had to go. And then she made me come out and sit with her on the porch. We watched the sun going down, and she was, you know, just in grief because we had made a relationship. Um, but she couldn't let me know because that, you know, she actually liked me. It took her a while, and she took her a while to trust me. But that kind of thing means a lot. But then I had to go.
Right.
We kept in touch with her. The last time we talked to her, she was actually 91. But she had, we told her, but by that time she was it was too late to tell me how much I cared about her. So, yeah, I get jobs that a lot of people don't want, and I don't blame them. I almost didn't want this job at all because I'd been around too much mortality. But this is about the end of life, um, and it was for Time magazine, and then you don't like the job. You feel very uncomfortable. The people are wonderful. They're very aware of that it's the end of their life. And then I meet people like this guy who is uh, ending of cancer, dying of cancer. He was an oncologist. He knew exactly what was going to happen. And we spent a couple of days together, and he welcomed me because he wanted someone outside of the family to talk to. So you're always surprised about why you get a
Mm.
relationship going. Um, and in the family, he wanted me to be there because, you know, he felt you're a member of the family without getting melodramatic. He also knew I would pay attention to his family, how great they were, and how difficult it is to care for illness.
And what are you shooting with?
This is a
And then
try.
just in general.
I, well, with the black and white photography, it was all small cameras, usually, not Leicas. I never could quite afford the Leica system, but I got Leicas actually for free later, which is good. But I had Olympuses when I was taking these pictures, and the little OM cameras, which were great cameras. They broke all the time, but they were quiet and they were small.
Mm.
This is 9/11. I wasn't here. I was out of the country doing in a psychiatric hospital when um, this American tragedy happened. I came home. Didn't want to go down there. This is probably an answer to your question a bit, to Frank. I couldn't go down there. I fucking had enough. And I said, there's so many good photographers going down there. This is the story, a major story in American history. I didn't need to go down there. And then at a certain place, and it affected everybody. It affected my son. Of course, every school kid was affected. Finally, Janine helped me. She said, let's get up because it's history. You've got to go cover history. But by this time, uh, we went down there, and it was the aftermath of history when the cleanup was still going on. So we ended up, this is going there to see the firemen in the rubble, the loneliness of not finding any survivors. And Janine did a beautiful text for a book called Stepping Through the Ashes, excuse me. And I did the photographs for it. And it was a way of talking about how tragedy stays forever and the complexities of tragedy. There were very families suffered terribly, firemen terribly, and we all know some perpetually. So it was an important story to do.
And yeah, just in that context, Gene, how do you have the mental strength to say, I'm not going to go down there, or I'm not going to cover this? I mean, like what is the the process you go through? Because like you say, there were a ton of other photographers down there, but like how do you come to this decision? That's something I just don't want to do.
Uh, Another good question, to be honest about it, as my family knows, or as Junie knows, every job I get, I say no to my head.
Ah,
Absolutely. I say, "Fuck it, I'm not going to do this. I don't want to do this. I'm getting lousy pay. I know this is, they're not going to run the pictures, which they usually don't." Um, uh, I go through a whole process,
okay.
sleepless night, um, and then I get up with that same thing. Oh, this is okay. This is what you do. Um, so you stifle it, you shut up, and you go. And usually with a massive headache, I'm not exaggerating. And then you go out there. It's a little like tonight going on here. Picking.
Hey,
I don't want. No, seriously, I don't do
yeah.
this. And you go. But once you start talking, it
Mhm.
changes entirely. The mood changes. And you're talking to real people. It changes you. So it's always that way. And sometimes it's never comfortable. This is a kind of photographic example that um, I don't think the family appreciated it. I think I was there to try to show it was doing a book on war as personal, the consequences of the Iraq War. Um, and there was a question in the family's life, should they let their son be seen this way? He was in between surgeries. Um, he was a very aspiring young man. A lot of the soldiers are, of course, and his life changed very dramatically through his wounds. His family was very much for the Iraq War. They weren't against it, you know. I think these are, yeah, I'm sorry. It's a picture from the Paraguayan institution against psychiatric. Oh, I'm sorry. This is maybe Mexico. This is a gentleman who was hearing voices we came to know. Um, so you try to show some range of experience. It's a very different kind of photograph. This is down in Arkansas. This is the 4th of July. Um, and these kids are just as snoopy as I am. They came up to peer into the camera and became these kind of ghostly images as they passed by. This is the 4th of July. That was the night before the 4th, and this was out with the family. And they were shooting off bottle rockets. And I did a book on medicine a couple years ago. Um, Part of one of the books that became kind of important to me was a book called The Knife and Gun Club, which I um, was about emergency medicine in Denver. Um, this is a follow up to that book, in a sense of the wonder of medicine, the bravery of the people out who do this work. Like the questions that you're asking of me is, how do you do this? How do you do this day after day after day? Um, This woman, by the way, this woman was getting her shoulder reset, and you can imagine the pain of having someone, this muscular guy, pulling on this thing, and when it goes, theoretically, it cracks like. So she turned to me and she saw me. I must have been biting my lip, and she said to me, "Honey," she said, you don't have to take these pictures." She said, "Honey, I know it's really hurting you." This is what she said, yanking on her goddamn arm. This is why you meet people wonderful, and they couldn't reset it, so she had to go into surgery. But people do that. They say, "We don't want, this is hurting you."
Um,
You know, travels to Ethiopia on a medical, basically to look at the problems people are having with, um, mosquito-borne diseases. This is a odd picture. They did a story on America, a man who got his facelift, first American face transplant.
mm,
Um, he was working painting a church down in Texas, touched an electrical wire, and it burned him all over his body, but burned his face off. And these surgeons gave him a new face, but they couldn't give him new eyes. After this, his life came back. He married. He might have even got divorced the American way, and he's married again. But this is a photograph in his hospital room. These are pictures. This is just a picture in an abandoned house with kids playing years ago. This is the great photographer Robert Frank, who I was blessed to know. I knew him 40 years ago, and then we fell away. The way we fell away is interesting because it speaks to our lives. He was a very open man. I mean, he was very good to me. But then we hit a certain point where I ran into a photographer and he said, Robert gets tired of people being in touch with him. He's exhausted by people bothering him. And I never thought I bothered him. I would never bother Robert Frank. But I stayed away from him until he called me one day and he felt that I kind of abandoned him. This is after many years. And this is how people feel. And so we became friends again. And my wife Janine got to know him, and Sam got to know him, and towards the end of his life. So this is up in Nova Scotia, not a short time before he passed away. So bringing you more up to date, I guess what's next is a video. I keep saying that I've done enough. I mean, and then you keep going on. Most recently, we just finished it, or I just finished it, a book called "Do I Know You?" Which is actually 22 small short stories about people that I met who have to be into. You have to know who they are. A little story about them, how complex they are, and they range from people I met for a few minutes to one person that'll offend everybody. He won't offend you here, but I did a story and we're doing a film on this monstrous Ku Klux Klansman that I met. But for the time being, I'll let this little film introduce the project, if you don't mind. As for memories, there are ones that stay hidden for a long while. Then come on suddenly. Even after all the years, I don't always know why people let me into their lives, or why they tell me what they tell me, except to say that I do my best not to impose on them. I listen. Listening is a good part of what I do. And this gives the people I've come to know a chance to talk freely. Even let go of a lot of things. Things that they might have once kept to themselves. As for why people let me take their pictures, I've got to think that for a lot of people, especially those who are oppressed, who've been ignored, having their picture taken is a means of being lifted out of the shadows. And remembered. Yeah, the work we do we've made films over the years, and I've got blessed to have Sam along, who I can come up with all these ideas and even kind of play with the music, but he can all put it together in this magic way. So anyway, that's what I have to show you.
Yeah. So, Gene, give us a little insight how it is to collaborate with Janine, all these years in putting your work together.
Well, everybody, I think it is a collaboration, but it's a collaboration because we all have different functions. Janine,
Right.
well, she corrected me because I put in describing her as someone who edited the text and everything. No, she's the one who holds the house together. She literally does. I'd be still doing what I do, but I'd be living in uh, two rooms somewhere and far away if it wasn't for her holding it together. And so, but she does research. She goes out on the road with me. Um, I bring her on the road and to her personality. Both of theirs personality. Janine is a massive pain in the ass on the road because she likes everybody. She gets along with everybody, as we could say. So I'm always telling her, I'm trying to film and so forth, to get out of the room. People think I'm the rudest thing alive because she'll be sitting there knowing more about people than I would ever know. But that's the way she is, and she's been that way. Um, and so it makes it, she's interested in the people we meet, but functionally, she functions as an editor, and she's a vicious photo editor. Um, I'm always trying to get pictures by her that, I say, yeah, this is a pretty good picture, and she says, if you get silence, you're fucking over, man. That's it. Silence. Or she'll say no. That's it. Doesn't explain why, which is the way I love to be criticized. I don't, there's no intellectualization, there's no great language. No, it doesn't work. And that's it. Um, and so over the years, we've been that way. And I think that and I support her life. She's a much more spiritual person than I am. With her yoga and her attention, she goes every week to a nursing home, um, to partake in dancing with the patients. And this is the way she is. And in Sam's case, Sam's a multi-talented person who was a physical trainer. And now we work a little more together. And he brings myriad talents that I don't have. You know, you know, he'll say I'm not quite computer illiterate, but he'll say yes, pretty much so. I'm a terrible typist, and so Janine has to retype my things. But it allows you to grow outside, and we did a film now 10 years ago, the first time with Sam, that's beautifully made in terms of its physicality, called The Kingdom Come, which you can get online. It's an hour-long film. Um, but it shows the kind of talents that he has. So we each have our place.
Right.
And Sam doesn't want to be a photographer. Janine sure it's actually Janine. Both of them are pretty good photographers, but they don't want to be. And I certainly can't handle the finances very well, and I can't even begin to do the things that Sam does. So each have our place.
Beautiful. And do you shoot with with an iPhone? Do you ever do that for fun?
But except for pictures of my cats, no, no.
No. Okay. So yeah,
No, I have a
this
digital. I shoot digitally, but I don't shoot
right.
on my phone, no.
Mm. And so we can get any of your books on your website. Is that right?
Yeah, the in this brief life was published. We've been very grateful to you got some people online here. We had Kickstarters, which paid for both these book, which is astonishing for us. And the last time the Kickstarter went very well, which people don't understand the work that goes into books. It's one
God.
taking the photographs and writing the text and then doing the design work and then finalizing. Because our books are handmade, basically. They go off to the printer, but everything we do, everything other than that, we do here. So the Kickstarter was very helpful, and it happened less. So yeah, that book, the new book, Do I Know You, will be you can purchase it through our website if you'd like, and it'll be out in January, February. Yeah.
And if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat room as we finish up with Eugene. So what's next, Eugene? I mean, is there, do you get antsy where like you got to do something new? How does it work for you?
Um, the crabby part of me says, no one believes it. Saying what Janine don't believe it. I always say I'm done, and they'll say sure. And so right now we're about to go back into looking at that film about you saw the picture of the Klansman with the flag. I was with him. Amazingly, how we met him, but I was with him at sort of to the end of his life when. Bottom line is he was a dreadful man, but he wanted to. He has I he wanted when he dies he wants to go to heaven. So the contradictions of his life are very large. It's been difficult because Sam's helping with this film, and Sam, to be honest, is having a very difficult time working on this film because he doesn't like this man, and so it's very difficult. You got to bite your tongue and try to do a treatment of him that shows his complexities. It's not easy.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the next small project we're doing, and then the one that I would like to do, but we just right now, as you know, and all of us know, in the photography business, it's increasingly difficult to raise funds. More and more questions about whether you're the right person to do this. Maybe it's ageism going on, but we're going to have a tough time. But I want to go back on the road and thinking about redoing the below the line book in a sense. And the reason for that is not just to look at poverty, but I realize all the selection talk, as you always heard, is there's a great deal of attention to, questions about people who have more. There's a lot of questions about the middle class. It's almost as if the people who are struggling out there don't exist anymore. And they're not part of the political debate anymore. So that's one thing I might like to do, but the funding is going to be very difficult to find.
Yeah. Let me read this one question. How do you compare gaining the trust of people you photograph, especially in private, intimate situations, in the era before social media and before everyone had a camera in their pocket, with now, given the ambiguity of photographs and today's understanding of the power of the photograph?
God, it's a complex question. I can answer part of it. I think
That's blame Ricky Rogers for that one.
yeah. uh, God, I'm thinking only about part of that. So apologies to the person who asked the questions. I'm thinking about the intrusion of the social media, the things that are being shown, the violations, the pulling of kids into this thing, um, uh, the selfies, etc. Um, as a journalist, it's a different kind of thing. It's I go out there, I study people, I'm reasonably careful about what I show and what I edit, and I have a numbers of photographs that people looked at them and they would misinterpret the people entirely unless I explained what it is. So they'll never see those pictures. Um, the pictures would simply do a disservice. That would make you understand is how this happens. That even happened years ago. I was working for Life magazine, and I did a story on these kids they were kids, 17 and 19-year-old having kids out in New Mexico. I did the story. They were wonderfully open to the point where I actually got them when they would fight they would actually physically fight when they would fight for a few minutes, and then I'd have to leave the room because they would be in the bedroom making love and so forth. But the writer came out and misunderstood the family. So the guy said, culturally, first off, the kid, like we talk about, pick on the Italian families. You go into the family, you finish a beer, you get another beer. And the kid explained that he said, we fight if we fight, we wail on each other. Now he's 6'2", she's 5'6", so the image is someone beating somebody. This is all in the article. The article was going to run. I argued against it. They changed the article. They fired me, Life magazine. But the material was changed and didn't come out, and it could have destroyed the people. And I don't know if I'm answering the question, but that's it. it's a matter of control, and it's very difficult because I'm one of these, like, we're all for freedom of expression, but now the freedom of expression is getting more and more and more. Um, the possibilities of ugliness and destruction are entering into it, and I think maybe that's why more and more of us are running away from it, running away from personal photography, because you know uh, if you put something out there, no matter what it is now, I can tell you, no matter what it is, you'll have your critics. If you do it on a certain, if I do it on certain people, they'll say, why didn't you do it on this people? If you um, do a certain race, they'll say, well, that you have no right to do this. If you do it on gender, they say, are you of that gender? You couldn't possibly understand that gender. So this is going on. People are getting very shy about doing this work.
Yeah, my question comes out of the fact, well, I work for Reuters. I'm in charge of the global pictures team, and of course our photos are everywhere when they're published, and we find it so much harder every day to get access because people know where our pictures, will be, and it's no longer you take a picture and you don't expect people to actually see them at any
Right.
point. Yeah.
And where do you think we go from here, Gene?
God, I don't know. I should get we're all asking those questions where we go from here. I think I think we're beginning to recognize what we're losing um, uh, more and more. Not that I really truly believe in the power of photography. Believe me, in the news media. On the other hand, I also believe in the power of storytelling, and more and more photographers are talking about that they're not storytellers anymore. They want the photograph by itself to be enough that you can interpret it. And I think anybody who's a news photographer knows that that doesn't always fly. I mean, certain destruction in a city is not the same as a destruction in another city. I think you have to apply information and ideas to pictures, but that's one thing there's certain elements that people are backing away from. I'm always amazed, for example, that you can do reenactments today of conflict and end up in MoMA and
And where?
end up in MoMA, Museum
Yeah.
of Modern Art.
Yeah. Moment. Yes.
But the photographs of actual conflict would never cross the door of MoMA because is you know uh, they call it that personal expression, but that people don't want the real thing; they want the imitation. So you can get pictures nowadays of everybody's working on memory pieces. They're working on pictures of, you know, uh, reenactments of plantation life and so forth. But they don't want to go down south and actually meet the people who are descendants of and talk to them and get their history. So if I'm asking, I think that maybe a return to that. I think we're kind of desperate for return because I know, as a news photographer knows, you don't want these events to be forgotten. But they're getting, when I go down south now, the kids have no idea there was a civil rights movement, no idea. And the generation now talking about these wars, you know, don't remember at all the Iraq War and Afghanistan is going to fade away in time. I heard we thought about doing a project. I hope I'm not running on too long about human conflict and then we decided I couldn't, there's a limit to it. And what prompted it was the numbers of realizing that, human beings in the last 100 years, there's an estimated 231 million people died in our wars in 100 years.
Wow.
Um, it's like, uh, how do you cope? How do you understand it? So it gives you a sense of urgency about the need to show these things. But I don't know who's going to show them in the future. I just don't know.
Yeah. I another question, and I always ask this to the photojournalists that we have on. What do you do to decompress for yourself? You're going, you photograph, these different things that are tough to look at a lot of the times and tough to experience. And then you end up, you're back in Brooklyn and, you're, in your beautiful home and on and on and on. What do you do to decompress from that experience that you just had?
That's, I don't have, when I was younger, I had more drinks, which I don't anymore. Um, so my decompression is pretty simple-minded. Um, Occasionally bad television. But my decompression, I've got, how do you term my cat? I got a slutty cat who he's not here right now. It's in my lap. I'm serious. It calms you down. I've got, and two family members that I love to death. And I don't know what, and that's it. And then I take upon myself walks. Ironically, people don't think you don't want to think of it more of it, but we have an incredibly beautiful cemetery called Greenwoods close by, which is full of plants, and you go there and it's lots of birds and it's quiet and out of the city. So you walk there, um, and you really I think everybody who's a journalist, I think, really appreciates. They don't know it, but they appreciate because of you seeing the other things. You really appreciate the beautiful things. I go out every day and look at the tree growing out back. That sounds very trite. We have a 120-year-old tree in the back, and you appreciate the animals and the trees. And that's absolutely the truth. That's how you decompress.
Yeah, there you go. So if anyone else has any questions, jump in. But if not, Gene, I can't tell you how much we all appreciate if you looked in the chat room, the comments here are just, so beautiful, so eloquent, and so appreciative that you gave us, this time and showed us this powerful, powerful work and a body of work that will live on through the ages. So, we're grateful and thankful that you shared all of these images and all of your time with us. And so I give you the final word for the night. Give us a signing off message. Give us some wisdom.
Oh God, damn. That's a funny thing because the older and older I don't have wisdom. I have hopes.
Okay.
I think that's hope. Um, Hope that there's not less consciousness, but more consciousness of so many things that are very precious to us. And I think there's still hope, though. People think of myself. I can be. I guess I can be gloomy. I hope I'm not. But I'm still hopeful. I think without it, you don't keep going. And I think the other thing is we have to find our own joys. And like I said, I found mine in the two people in my life, and that's an important thing too. Is if you've got friends, treasure them. If you've got an environment around you, treasure them, and that keeps you going. Yeah.
Great. Well, again, I thank you so much, and I thank everyone for coming in. This was wonderful. This will be up on YouTube, I guess by the weekend. And you could get Gene's books at his website. And I thank you so much. And Sam, I appreciate you helping us pull through. And Janine wasn't with us tonight. I'm sure she's somewhere doing something that she should be doing and getting ready for the next project or editing a book for you. But Gene, thank you so much really for doing this. And you have a standing offer, of course. Anytime you want to come back and show us the next book or the next video, we would love to have you. So I thank you very, very much.